Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Post Morning Show. I'm your host, rdizzle408, with my co-host, ML. The date is Monday, July 21, 2025. Our topics for the day. First of all, we'll go through a short burst on tariff negotiations and deals. Second, Epstein. Do we really need to talk about it further, or shall we let the unspooling of the grand jury testimony take place? Thirdly, we'll go back to Israel's attack on Syria. It's let up, but what is going on there? So let's dive right in, folks. First of all, Alan, our VIP Alan, questioned Stephen Moore, the economist, on two-way tonight, and Moore took a punt, his own words. So let's review that clip real quickly, if folks don't mind. And I'm going to hit the share sound button. Hopefully I get this right. And here we go.
Alan, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, your question for Steve Moore.
I'm in Tallahassee, Florida, and my question for Steve was, I was talking to actually a businessman from Malaysia, and he sort of explained how the businesses are probably going to eat the tariffs because that's a cost of doing business. They're not going to not come to our market. That's Trump's leverage, and I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on his theory that he was talking to me about.
It's a good question. I don't know if I know the answer to it. A lot of economists have been all over the place on that issue about who bears the burden of a tariff. So I guess I'm just going to kind of punt on this and say some of the cost of the tariffs will be borne by the businesses. So for example, if we put a tariff on the French wine, for example, that the French wine companies will have to lower their profit margins. But I do think some of that tax eventually gets passed on to the consumer. And so I think, what ratio that is, I don't really know. But I'm uncomfortable with this argument that tariffs won't cause higher inflation. I think they will cause higher prices in some of those products where the tariffs apply.
Okay. I was just curious because his argument made a lot of sense, and it sort of made me think about like a Sam's Club.
Yeah, but remember, sorry to interrupt, but remember, a company has to make a profit. If they can't make a profit, they're out of business. So if the tariff is so high that it just erodes their profit margin, then they're either going to have to raise their prices or they're going to have to go out of business. And so, that's why we have seen a lot of companies that I talk to, that are importing stuff. And, look, we don't just import like wine and things. We import a lot of steel, plastic, copper, auto parts and so on. And those, I don't think Trump fully appreciates that. That's when you raise those prices, you're raising the price of let me give you a simple example. I'm totally opposed to steel tariffs. I think those are the protectionist tariffs are the worst kind of tariffs because steel is obviously embedded in everything that, not everything, but most of the things that are produced, especially manufacturing, construction. So if you raise the steel price in the United States, you're going to make building a home more expensive. You're going to make building a car more expensive. You're going to make, and that puts our other companies at a disadvantage. That's why, Mark, we found, based on a review of the literature, that steel tariffs actually lose jobs in manufacturing. Now, that may seem counterintuitive, but yeah, you gain some jobs in the steel industry, but you lose jobs in other industries that use steel because it's more expensive, and that puts our other products at a competitive disadvantage.
All right. So first of all, Alan, great job on that. Did you want to share anything, Alan, about it?
No, hearing Shamsul's perspective really got me thinking about the tariffs and just business in general. He made the point that, a company in Malaysia is going to eat the cost because they don't want to go out of business and lose access to the US market. I wanted to further my point with the economists and talk about the US being like a Sam's Club or a Costco where you pay the membership fee to get in the door to have access to all the goods and low prices. and being able to do business there. So, but I didn't get to make that point. I was trying to go there, but it was a really, I felt it was a really simple question, and I think I got a little lick in, so felt
Well, hey,
nice.
whenever you get the other team to punt in football, that's a good good play right there. Peter from NorCal.
Yeah, I saw that too, and it was very well done. I remember I watched, and I did watch it live. Well, no, I didn't watch it live. I went back and watched it later. But the thing that I wanted to add on, like that, that came into my head when he was talking about steel, and the idea that steel, it's supposedly raises prices for these other industries. It's like, even if that's true, I would want to know, like, how much, and how do you balance that against the fact that steel is an incredibly, like, steel, like, it's beyond just like prices. Like, steel is incredibly strategically important for national security, especially if we're in a geopolitical competition with China, right? Like, and Trump talks about that when he talks about, like, his, whether it be the U.S. steel intervention deal, or tariffing steel. He talks about that. Not just, he does talk about state saving steel jobs, but he also talks about how, like, you can't, I mean, basically, you can't be a major power like we are, and trying to do the things that we want to do on the world stage without having a domestic steel production.
Thank you for that, Peter. Shamsul.
Yeah. Okay. I found Alex.
Wait a minute, Shamsul. Kuala Lumpur's in Malaysia. Are you that Malaysian businessman?
I have no idea who Ellen was talking about, man. I have no idea who that was. Okay, let me put it this way. I feel bad. I honestly feel bad the way the response came, to be honest. But I mean, companies got to make a profit is not an argument for or against tariff. The sources have to compete for the US market, right? If you can't compete, you close down. If you've got nowhere else to swing your export or your production, and you can't pay, as what Peter said, you can't pay the club membership inside to have your product put on the shelves at Costco. You can't sell to Costco, right? And you're not the only one selling to Costco. That's the one thing that I want to point out. I want to expand a bit, because what's his name? What's the economist's name? Moore, isn't it? Right?
Stephen Moore was the gentleman.
Stephen Moore, yeah. So Stephen Moore brought up steel. Here's the interesting thing about steel. It sort of like reminded me, when in the late 80s, actually, I was head of procurement in Shell. Head of procurement for steel products. Okay, right? And good luck trying to negotiate with me. I'm the big client, right? Okay, it's all about leverage. Now, I'll tell you guys what I check out on tariffs, not just from the point of view of strategic, from a strategic standpoint, right? Okay, the US is the second largest importer of steel in the whole world. So that's the market we are talking about, right? Okay, then you've got basically about, in terms of steel suppliers, there's about 174,400 suppliers from 180 countries that is doing business in the US from different countries. But having said that, here's the interesting fact, right? Because I use the 2023 data, right? Steel imports, completed steel imports account for just 21% of the US market. Same hotel, $100 left. Right? So if you've got 79% actually from domestic production. So you're just talking about the next 21%. That's 21%. It's already the second largest market. And the other thing about steel, steel is not a consumer product. Steel is purchased in bulk. It's basically by company like Ecor, Mittal, and that kind of that is bringing in bulk, and they have to really negotiate, with these kind of companies, the men who not only actually manufacture products, they also mine. If you go, they also do mining of the iron ores as well. So this is a tough market for you to start negotiating with the US, right? So then you look at it, right? I did a quick check. So more than 80% of the tariffs, more than 80% of the steel is basically 4 countries: Canada, 8.36 billion, Brazil, 4.56 billion, Mexico, 3.73, South Korea, 2 billion. All right. Let me tell you guys something quickly about Canada. They're going to fall. 77% of Canadian exports are to the US. How are you going to negotiate? You're dead in the water.
Dean,
Right?
how are we going to negotiate? Sorry, Shamsul. Was there something else you wanted?
Go ahead. I think it's better put somebody else in. Let Dean come in, right?
Yeah.
And then we can have a conversation, because I really dig a bit on this one, because I was like, and the thing is that the consumers for the steel products are not those guys, are not on. This is not a distributorship. This is not where you go to the retail shop. This is huge importers you got to negotiate with in the US. So anyway, let Dean have his word. Then maybe we get a conversation going here, right?
Yeah, I am not the person to have a tariff conversation, but this is how I begin, for this reason. We haven't had them, and I'll use Ben Shapiro as a proxy. What does Ben think on this? And Ben's a purist when it comes to, similar to Stephen Moore. Tariffs, over the long term are not good policy. But what I equate this to is, this was back in, I think this started in maybe the 80s or 90s. And when gambling started moving out of Vegas, Mayor Voinovich of Cleveland, then Governor Voinovich of Ohio, took a hard line and said, Ohio is not going to have gambling, and took a very purist view. As he was taking that, money was going to Mountaineer in West Virginia. Money was flowing into Pennsylvania. Money was flowing all around the state, gambling money. And Ohio was not able to take any of that or get any of that funds. And in a purist view, I understand, and I even agreed with Voinovich at the time. But if everybody else is going to get into this, we have got to, that has got to be, in my mind, it has got to be a lever that we use, especially somebody mentioned steel. I mean, when China starts dumping a bunch of steel on the market, I want tools quickly to bring to bear on something like that. Now, that said, I don't understand. I wish the administration would start to gel on a single idea. Is it we're looking to get everyone to lower their tariffs? Is it we're looking to raise revenue with tariffs? Is it some combination of both that I'm not quite seeing? I'm open to it. I was glad I actually saw you live, Alan, you and Raleigh, give your questions to Mr. Moore. I thought those were both good exchanges. I would have loved to have I wanted to hear what he was going to say. He didn't address your Sam's Club issue. I agree. I don't think he got that out. But I think I'm not as nervous as I was before, and nor is the market, by the way, about any tariffs that are going to be in play.
Thank you for that, Dean. Peter?
Yeah, so the point, I do think it is both, and I think they have become better in recent days at communicating that. I think, I watched Howard Lutnick on Face the Nation, and Lutnick hasn't been in the past the best communicator on this for the administration, but he was more
he's better than Navarro.
Fair. But he did
I think I agree with you, Peter. I think Lightning is not the best at it. Besson is better, but I think the problem is actually it's Lightning's job, and he's not doing as good a job. I think I can do a better job.
Well, but my point being that and Jameson Greer is good as well, the trade rep. But the point being, like, he did talk about how, like, you know, the 10% tariff is going to stay. That is like the other tariffs, the you know, with the various nations, those are what's being negotiated. And those can come down if, you know, countries choose to lower their tariffs on the US, but the 10% tariffs will stay for revenue and other things. But I wanted to make a higher level point in general just about, you know, conventional wisdom in economics that's being promoted by these, you know, expert institutions and people so-called. There was an article that, like, I literally just saw this 2 minutes ago. It came up in my feed, from the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph in the UK, basically talking about how it's come out. It's been alleged that after Brexit, the World Economic Forum essentially is being accused of manipulating its data to make post-Brexit economic productivity in the UK look lower than it actually was, because otherwise it would be Mr. Schwab 87 wrote to staff that the UK, quote, must not see any improvement, as otherwise it would be exploited by the Brexit camp. The point being, and I'm not impugning, you know, Mr. Moore seems like a nice guy, right? I'm not impugning his integrity, but I do think that a lot of this, you know, a lot of the conventional wisdom that's supposedly backed up by experts and statistics and stuff that, you know, is weighted in favor of the establishment on various issues, whether it be that you know, when things get brought up that fly in the face of sort of the consensus, that a lot of that is driven by either ideological bias or outright corruption. And I think, you know, this popped up, and I think it was a very good example of that. Again, it's being investigated, but, you know, worth considering.
Thank you for that, Peter. And Shamsul, with a final word in reply for Peter, and then we're going to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I saw the same interview with that Howard Lightning did, which is a lot better than previous explanations. Just to give it a bit more spice to what to the macro side of steel. So you've got Canada, which I think not an issue to negotiate with. Brazil is going to be a bit more difficult because Brazil's export to the US is only about I think you know, it's a fraction of their GDP. So Brazil is in a better position. South Korea, on the other hand, is actually providing South Korea and Mexico will probably give a better diversified resource. So at the end of the day, you're talking about practically about you know, just to patch up, if you want to be fully be able to strategically have security on your steel supply, I think that's very achievable, the way I see it. As far as steel is concerned, as a major strategic commodity, right? So I think the problem is basically people, the headwind is the media is not pro Republican, nor is it definitely is actually anti-Trump situation. So whether we like it, that's basically the problem that actually the administration faces when it tries to get out its communication. You know, so that's all I want to make a point at this stage. Yeah, thank you.
I think we had one thing that Peter wanted to add, and Andre also, I think, wants to talk about tariffs. So those will be our last two on this topic. Peter, go ahead.
I had one question for you, Shamsul. As far as, you know, you have insight, what do you think is going to happen with Japan? You know, with, you know, both the tariff situation and just sort of the political situation there in general. Because I saw that, you know, yesterday they had the elections for the House of Councilors, and the LDP did not do well. And, you know, given that and the unpopularity of Prime Minister Ishiba, I read an article about it, and, you know, among other things, the article described, there's a lot of issues there. There's issues of corruption. There's cost of living. There's all sorts of things. But one thing that was noted as well was frustration with him that he hasn't been able to get a deal done. And there's a lot of questions now about how long he can continue as prime minister. How do you see that playing out? How do you see that playing out if you have any insight?
Well, sorry, that's the problem actually. If you look at the situation, where's my hold on, trying to get my excuse me. Yeah, okay. So that's the thing with the Japan. You rightly put. I think there's a bit of instability there that makes decision making very difficult when you want to go and negotiate with your counterpart. The same, I think, is playing right now. If you look at it in China, I'm really not sure. So actually, I'm quite happy to see Luke today because the insight even in China, the way they are negotiating with the EU also is problematic in my opinion. So whilst I think negotiation with Japan can be sorted out, the only issue then actually is who is negotiating with you guys? Do they really have the capability to come to the table and make decisions? I don't know. I don't have that answer, Peter, right now.
Okay, Andre?
Howard Lutnick does make good sound bites, but unfortunately he doesn't tell the truth in them. So that goes to his All In podcast appearance when he talked about Elon and how Elon was going to easily do $2 trillion in cuts. He's made outlandish promises as a commerce secretary. And then he's also has the problem with the fact that he refuses to acknowledge what tariffs do to economy. He refuses to acknowledge them as inflationary or as a tax to people. So there are plenty of people in Washington who very much see him completely different than Jameson Greer because Lutnick likes to make outlandish promises. It's been his career in Cantor Fitzgerald in New York when he decided to screw over the families of people who worked for him. After his employees died, he cut off the health insurance for everybody in their related families as well. So he doesn't have a great name in New York. But in terms of trade, I really don't understand. I don't understand a lot of the arguments when we're talking about where we just had these conversations. We mentioned steel, we mentioned Canada, we mentioned Japan. These are all countries that the United States needs to be strong as allies when we want to take on China. And so that's the major question when you're talking to a Stephen Moore or other people is, are we on the same team or not? You're on a basketball team, you have issues with your point guard, but you can't hand check your point guard. Like, we're still attacking the other team and not your team. Even if you have issues with the point guard's work ethic or something like that, we're actively hurting. Like, the economy of Japan is diving. Their exports dove since Trump enacted the tariffs. And so now, as Peter mentioned, the political situation is that the prime minister is going to stay on because nobody else wants to take this on. Like, anybody else who would come into this job knows it's not a winning issue for them. So the politicians in Japan's ruling class are like, you can stay because we don't want to take care of this. That was just as of the last 12 hours. The prime minister confirmed he's staying on for now.
Shamsul?
Can I take a quick one just to round out? I disagree that specifically to stay that is binary. Putting on tariffs is going to be inflationary as a given. It's not true, right? The question that's number one. Secondly, in terms of how you play the field, it doesn't matter if you're supposedly on the same team. You're not necessarily on the same team. It's basically everybody has got their own interests. Actually, it's a question of how you leverage certain interests to your situation. But as a president of America or a presidency, the first interest that you have to take into account is your own people's interests. That's the way I see it. I expect the same thing from the Prime Minister of Malaysia. And then you say, okay, now where our interests converge, what do we do? So I mean, I think that's all I want to say. I think we spend too much on this subject. I would think probably I will have a singular podcast on mine to just talk tariffs. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Shamsul. Jacqueline Marie did want to chime in real quickly. Go ahead, Jacqueline. Not real quickly, take your
I
time.
think what we're missing in an inflation discussion is inflation is partly rooted in what people are willing to pay, and because economics is a social science and not just about numbers. And so if you can convince Americans it's normal to pay more, they're going to pay more in some cases. So there's going to be some inflation, I think, if the tariffs go through, because if companies can argue that they need, if Americans believe that a company needs to charge more to stay in business, which is what Americans tend to believe, they're going to be willing to pay more. And that's a big fact. What people are willing to, and like the perception is a big part of inflation, because inflation is driven by people's opinion a lot of the time and not really just on economic numbers.
Jacqueline Marie, just on that, as we round out, hopefully this rounds us out, right? You may know better than me. I don't want to be gender typing here, but Coach purses, right? These are like $1,000, $2,000 purses.
I just know it's a luxury purse.
It's a luxury purse, right? So I feel like there's a margin there that the producers could absorb. I mean, just an example on purses,
Sure.
right? Like where the cost wouldn't go up. So some things like that, purses, furniture, software, it's hard for me to see what those margins actually are.
Yeah, but the average American is not buying a Coach purse. And so I guess maybe inflation would be more likely to affect household goods, because the average American doesn't buy luxury household goods because those have lower profit margins.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys for that discussion on tariffs. And now we're going to move on to our second topic, okay, about Epstein. There's currently a grand jury testimony that is supposed to be unspooling, as we've said. But we also have a 2015 interview by Sean Hannity with Trump at CPAC. Just a quote from Trump when asked about Bill Clinton, right? Let's see. Nice guy, got a lot of problems. Let me do it again. Nice guy, got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with a famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems. Now, back to our original question regarding Epstein. Do we really need to talk about it further, or is the grand jury testimony going to reveal things? This was published July 18th, 2025 in the New York Times. The Justice Department asked a federal judge on Friday to unseal grand jury testimony from the prosecution of the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, as President Trump seeks to dispel a storm of criticism and conspiracy theories coming from many of his supporters. I don't think Trump is connected. As it said, the leverage would already have been used, or the exploits or whatever, but let's get folks' opinions. Luke from China.
So I think this is going to be enough. I think this is what we wanted. It's just going to become a question of how much redacted it is. Because if it's not redacted, then that's great. That means we're going to be able to really get an understanding of what was going on, and we'll kind of move from there. I mean, the whole point of the Jeffrey Epstein point is not him himself. It's more about the clarity in our government, and also, the people who were actually on the island who were doing crazy stuff. And those people, I've been crying this ever since, Occupy Wall Street. The rich get away with whatever they want. The SEC doesn't have enough teeth. The FBI doesn't go against the other people. It's like, how are we supposed to care about, like, if the rich people are doing nothing, that's great. That means that they're becoming a great quality part of our community. But we see over and over again people going around playing with their girlfriends in Coldplay concerts and getting away, and most of them get away with it.
Hey, we like Coldplay here. Just kidding.
Coldplay's fine. Just don't bring your people with you to hold and kiss.
Oh, I agree. I'm just
your
saying,
HR
Coldplay, we love.
HR said it was okay.
Okay, the locals are getting restless. Dean, help settle them down, or incite them, as you made, Dean.
Yeah, I'm bringing my can of gasoline here. No, I'm not one of these guys that needs to learn more about the Epstein case. However, what Luke says does ring true, and we want to make sure that just follow a process. I think this is, as I look back at the last 6 months of the Trump administration, I have been happy overall with what's been accomplished and the direction. No administration gets away unscathed and gets away from unforced errors. This was a huge unforced error on two fronts. One, it was spoken about in the lead up to the election as something that needs to get cleared up. The base of, I'll say, MAGA was ginned up, and Trump was going to be their enforcer over the elites to open this up and be transparent. Let's see if that was and then the second unforced error is just how Pam Bondi, our attorney general, it might have been innocent up front, but it sure looked like a cluster of stuff as it rolled out. So this is just one of those unforced errors that happened. Right the ship, get back to a systematic approach of handling this and a transparent approach, and move on from this distraction as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you for that, Dean. Are there any other folks that would like to add in about Epstein, or are we all in agreement? We're going to let the process unfold. Alan, sir, with your hand up.
I was just say, so I feel like the whole Epstein thing is I know it's conspiracy tinfoil hat theory, but I have a feeling it's going to be a game of like 4D chess versus checkers, like pushing the Democrats to say, release it, release it, release it, release it. Then when everything gets released, it's going to be like Lucy pulling the football from Charlie Brown, something not good for them. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Alan. Haley?
So I might be the only one that was kind of creeped out by what the Wall Street Journal found out about Trump and Epstein's relationship, even though there's nothing like, like a big smoking gun or something, or, any kind of actual information that Trump was involved in anything. But those messages, those that know whatever it was, it's creepy. Things are like said there, and it's just all a big creep.
These are alleged notes, right? Because Trump is denying them, I believe.
Right. He says they're fake. And if they are fake, I'll take everything I said back. But if they're not fake, there is like some creepy shit in there. I mean, I don't think anything. I think everybody can agree that if it's true, like some of the things that were said were weird and creepy. Do I think he's the only one that's saying weird and creepy things to Jeffrey Epstein? Definitely not. I'm sure everybody else is saying, knows and has those innuendos or whatever. I'm not surprised. We all know that they've been friends for very, very long time. Jeffrey Epstein was friends with so many powerful, rich and wealthy people, and we have no really reason why he knows so many people, and if he was in business with everybody, whatever. Do I think this story will go on? Yes. I really do. I don't think it's over. I think he's doing damage control, and there's always going to be people who it's not enough for. So if there's going to be people who are, asking for more and more and more and more, you're never going to get rid of this story. And I don't think it's going away. I think he's doing damage control, and I hope it works, works for him. But I'm sick of the story, but I don't think it's going away.
We have the allegations of those messages, but do you give Trump any credit for his claim that basically he got rid of Epstein from the country club after the staff complained of untoward?
Yeah, I think that's a fact. Like I don't know if it was after was it after the first conviction where he then banned him from Mar-a-Lago?
I thought it was.
I don't remember when it was. But I know that that's true. I know that that's like an actual fact. So I don't think Trump is one of the people that are being alleged. I really don't. But I think he knew. I think he's known since the day he met Jeffrey Epstein and never said anything. And I think it's more complicated than we give Trump credit for.
Okay. Okay. Dean?
I just want to recognize that all of that commentary came from a girl in a shirt that says "Hot Girls for Capitalism." Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Haley.
This is
Hey.
Olivia Reingold's t-shirt. Everybody should order one. Whoever doesn't want Zoran Mamdani.
Wait. Let me do my best Mark Halperin impersonation. Dean, was that all you wanted to say, or did you also have a question?
Yeah, I've got more. Two things. One, there's not, you're not going to be able to remove the politics from the Epstein. So I, for one, this little dance that Trump is doing over this, since you can't remove the politics from it, I don't mind how slow some of this is coming out. That is not to negate what Epstein did or what alleged has happened to these young girls. Two things can be true: very bad, and politics will stay involved with this. And then lastly, I don't know, as far as the creep nature of comments of the past, whether it's Biden grabbing and sniffing the hair of his the women in his immediate vicinity, or H.W. Bush in the wheelchair telling dirty jokes or inappropriate jokes to people in his vicinity. Again, I'll just put the big distraction term over top of all of this and say we would all be better by moving on from this, and but let the proper procedures take root.
Okay, thank you, Dean. And for the YouTube viewers out there, these are serious topics. The reason your host or moderator is laughing here is because the Zoom chat, these guys are very funny. You just don't see the the antics. Peter?
Yeah. As Luke posted in the chat, it was before the first, it was before the first conviction that he kicked Epstein out. Also, and then Luke posted this about lawyers thanking Trump for his testimony. There are two different victim lawyers, Virginia Giuffre, the most famous accuser, and then one other victim's lawyer who said that Trump voluntarily came forward and gave them a lot of helpful information. So worth knowing there. I'm frankly depends what you mean by go away, right? As in, will this never be spoken of again? Obviously not. But I think that the temperature has gone down, like the outrage cycle has put other things on the front burner. So, and I mean, I'm kind of tired of it, to be honest. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you for that, Peter. Yeah, I want to just share that I mentioned it, I think, in the Zoom chat as just a point of reference. Okay, Jeffrey Prather, people can look him up. He's a former spook trainer, not a spook, I shouldn't say that. I think he's a military guy. He's been consulted or whatever. His claim is that Ezra Cohen-Watnick is the Q, okay, the whole QAnon thing, okay, for better or worse. It's, maybe we could call it executive counterintelligence, right? That Trump, the decision, right? How do you counter the mainstream narrative? You got to use these stunts, these theatrics. So when we see Anonymous now, this is what's being spoken out, that essentially Trump exploited leverage. Dan Turntine says, deep state to get the big, beautiful bill passed. However, Trump got it passed. And if the system unfolds and, people still get revealed, then it's, that's the system. Peter?
There was one last Epstein thing that I was going to say, but I forgot because you brought up things that made me. This is like when someone says something, lawsuit. And it makes me
the Trump lawsuit, Peter.
Yeah, well, that yeah. I mean, I for one don't believe for 1 second that he wrote that letter. It does not sound like anything he's ever written. At most, and I think Sean or one of the guys made this point on the Friday show. At most, and he gave it to an assistant or he told an assistant, I want to send Jeffrey Epstein a birthday message, or somebody. I don't know. He is suing the Wall Street Journal. It is hard. I will be interested to see what happens with that, because one of the things that I'm interested in, like I'm going to law school next month. One of the areas where I'm interested in practicing law is actually libel law. That's an area that really interests me. It will be, the big test for that will be if it survives a motion to dismiss, because it's very hard to get past that if you're a public figure who's alleging defamation, because we have a very high standard for what a public figure has to prove. The standard is you have to prove actual malice. So we'll see. I mean, it'll be tough, but if they get past motion to dismiss, I mean, they'll probably, if Shamsul said about discovery, I don't know I don't know if people want to do discovery in this case. I feel like if it gets past motions to dismiss, they'll probably settle. But maybe not. Like maybe, it's possible that, that seems like the most likely outcome to me. And that doesn't have anything to do. It's just because of the really high burden that the plaintiff has to meet in those cases. Like there's been a lot of examples where I think, people were right to accuse people of saying false or misleading things about them in the media, but because the standards are so high, it's the defendants are pretty well protected in those areas. But to what Rule was saying about deep states and whatnot, I only caught the last 20 minutes or so of two-way, and like I think that when Turrentine said, "Oh, it's Trump's deep state now," that fundamentally misunderstands what the deep state is. The deep state is not political appointees, okay? Like to give you an example, like the deep state is the permanent bureaucracy, career military officials, things like that. Like to give you an example of the country which originated the term deep state, Turkey. It took about, and this is not an endorsement of Erdogan. I'm not a fan of Erdogan, but the fact is that he was an outsider who was, an enemy of the previous Turkish deep state. It took him about 15 years to. I will try. I try to get on morning meeting all the time, but they never call on me. Maybe I'll make this. Maybe I'll go in group chat. They like me there. They call on me. But it took Erdogan about 15 years to really break the Turkish deep state and establish control. I think he first became prime minister in 2003, and even in 2016, he was almost overthrown in a coup by military officers who were still embedded in the Turkish military. So it's not an overnight process. The idea that like, oh, after 6 months, it's Trump's deep state now is just ridiculous. And, and so many of these agencies are still hostile to their political appointees. I mean, a great example is Health and Human Services, right? There's a lot of people in the Maha community were outraged that the FDA approved this new Moderna vaccine. Turns out, it just came out over the weekend that was done when RFK was on vacation. He wasn't even told that, like, they didn't even tell him about it. They literally went behind his back and put that through. So it just and I saw somewhere, I forget where someone said this, but they basically estimated that out of the 60,000 or so HHS employees, only 75 are like not hostile to RFK and the Maha agenda. There's been a lot of talk about the hostility of the career bureaucracy at the Pentagon to Pete Hegseth and his team. So the idea that it's his deep state now is just ridiculous. And that's all I wanted to say about that.
Appreciate that, Peter. Dean?
Yeah, this is so important. Just a big picture. This is why I was happy to see the executive branch begin to make cuts into the large bureaucracy that is in place. I'm not even going to subscribe. The line goes something like never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by incompetence or stupidity or something along those lines. These agencies have gotten so big, and other things have taken root. I'm not even saying that they're not all trying to do good things, but the deep state is so below the level of where any administration has really tried to cut. So I think that I think you said it so well, Peter. I think it needs it's a good line, for the show, for a quick soundbite when Dan says that, hey, it's your government now. And it's hard for folks to say, I don't want people to get malicious about this, but it's the Democrats are hitting on one side saying, hey, you're cutting too much. On the other side saying, well, it's your deep state now. The framing is such a lose-lose proposition and look, that's what political groups do. So hopefully you get that message out.
Luke?
Yeah, I mean, this has kind of been the big thing for me. It's like this deep state thing where, there's a lot of people in the government who have become fat and lazy. And I know that's hard to say, but like here in China, when you get something done, it gets done. And in America, it's like maybe it'll take a week, maybe it'll take a month. And I think that's kind of been the problem. It's been people are not ready to take responsibility and they'd rather just relax. I mean, how many times have we heard about people who have had a government job but has done nothing, but they can't fire them because the unions in the government won't let you fire them, or they are it takes like months to get a person fired. I mean, this is insane. Why do people in America have to pay for these people who are just not helping the government? And I can agree with Andre where we're saying like we do need some things, like there are some issues that Trump has done where that we were trying to digitize a lot of things and they're not getting done. But I mean the whole drudgery of what's going on within the government is killing it, and it's just letting other groups come in and take advantage of America from it, and we're getting poorer and poorer from it.
Peter?
That's totally right. I mean, and this has been a problem long before Trump, that the permanent career civil service basically thinks that it got sort of supercharged with Trump, because then I think there became an ideological and political reason to overtly oppose things. But even like my mom was in the Obama administration, and she said that the careers call them, like in reference to in how they see themselves versus the politicals, the careers call themselves the weebies, as in we be here before you and we be here after you, which is kind of, they kind of think that they can do whatever they want, and they'll just outlast any sort of political appointee who is supposed to be the person who controls them and tells them what to do. And yes, and then when Trump comes in, someone who is anti-establishment, there's been all these examples, like when Rubio laid off a bunch of people at the State Department last week, they literally put up like papers on the wall saying resist fascism, like telling their coworkers who were still there to obstruct things that Rubio was trying to do. There was like Project Veritas has gotten, or not Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, I think, because it's, James O'Keefe is no longer, like, has broken up with Project Veritas, but like they've gotten people from the Defense Department on, recorded, talking about how much they hate and are opposed to Hegseth and Trump. So it's like, it's not, I think, in some cases it's like not overt like hostility, but I think in this current day and age, it absolutely is.
Thank you, Peter. Duke?
Yeah, my stepdaughter and her husband and both his parents have worked in the government for I guess the kids have been there probably 15 years, and the parents were career DOD. And when you have both hands in your pockets, they refer to it as you are wearing your government gloves. And it does take absolutely forever. One of them had an employee who was working a second job who would come in to the office and sleep about half of his working hours, and it took them a full 6 months to get rid of him, and partly because he was a minority. So And Peter, that is the best explanation of deep state I have ever heard. That was absolutely in just a short couple of sentences. That sums it up perfectly.
Thanks for that, Duke. And we're going to move on to our third topic, talking Turkey, no pun intended, but I'm, interesting that it was mentioned the term originated with Turkey. So in terms of what's going on in Israel with Syria, right, what's not being mentioned, and that's why I'm so glad that we can discuss it now. Okay, this is from the Nordic Monitor. Turkey plans to run Syria through a parallel structure, according to secret plan. HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham's leader, which would be Jolani, is seen with Turkish intelligence agency chief Ibrahim Kalin in Damascus on December 12, 2024. That link will be in the description. The limo's blacked out, so you can't see Jolani's face, but I don't know what other leader they could be referring to. He was the guy running HTS, another name for Al-Qaeda. So while Turkey incites Islamists to attack minorities that Israel steps in to protect, the resulting international outcry will be to carve up Syria. This is what the talk is. And I would like to bring Shamsul on this discussion. He has some interesting perspectives on it.
Okay, we had some discussions on this on my own Gutshot podcast. I had Malaysia's most read blogger, I would call it. He's quite prominent here. So me and my partner, so what you've got is two Muslims and one ethnic Chinese in Malaysia talking about the Middle East. And our perspective with respect to Palestine, our perspective with respect to the Middle East, our perspective with respect to what they call political Islam and the extremism that we see, and the position of Israel in the middle of everything. So I think we touch only a bit on Syria, to be honest, because things were not that clear. Apart from that, what we see is Israel coming and stepping in on behalf of the Druze population. But we really don't know exactly who started everything in a sense. But there's a lot of tribalism going on. And we looked at it, to us, actually, in short, it has been quite a quagmire in the Middle East that affects actually all the Muslim population around the world, because that's where basically where political leaders has been that in the Islamic societies has been using as one of their tools to keep on their Muslim population voting for them or supporting them. That includes Iran. Anyway, I would say this: the discussion is a lot longer. We had about 2-hour discussion. I think you guys would really love to if you get to listen to it. I urge you to go on it. You'll get a very interesting perspective that you won't hear two Muslims talking like this, all right, and an ethnic Chinese in Malaysia actually looking at it with our prism and putting and saying it out. I was just hoping that I don't get the police knocking on my door. That's all.
We hope that does not happen either, Shamsul. And we can say, oh, those things only happen over there, but I mean, it's popping up everywhere. UK, in California, might have been now 5-6 years ago, but there was a gentleman who also got in trouble for posting some things on the blog.
Hold on a second, Rahul. I just want to tell everybody the Syed Akbar was. Can you imagine this? Syed Akbar was appointed by the government in 2013, I believe, as one of the advisory panel for the anti-corruption agency. And one of his book, which he published in 2006, is called Malaysia and the Club of Doom: The Collapse of Islamic Countries. That book was banned by the Malaysian government in 2016. So you guys are gonna get an interesting perspective from our conversation. Haley, I would really love to hear from you after you've seen our podcast.
Thank you, Shamsul. Peter?
Yeah.
Well, I had a question for Haley, actually, in terms of, you said, Erdogan is a huge problem. Do you anticipate this getting closer and closer, like escalating as far as a proxy conflict, or even more than that, between Turkey and Israel in Syria? I mean, it's interesting because before Erdogan, when Turkey was ruled by the Kemalists, Turkey was an ally of Israel. Like, it was for a long time, it was the most pro-Israel state in the Middle East, along with, ironically enough, Iran under the Shah. But Erdogan is tilted much more in a pro-Muslim Brotherhood, anti-Israel direction. And I saw a clip from Israeli television. I think it was in the period around the Iran strikes, where he basically said something like, the anchor, and I don't know who this person was or how authoritative this is, but they basically said, the quote was something like, Hezbollah is the quarterfinals, Iran is the semifinals, and Turkey is the finals. So do you think that sentiment is accurate, that like Israel is looking towards an ultimate showdown with Turkey for primacy in the sort of Syria, Lebanon area?
That's interesting. I haven't heard that. I've heard it being like Iran is like the finals, but I wouldn't be surprised if there would be some kind of conflict between Turkey and Israel in the future because of how anti-Israel Erdogan has become. I mean, you were absolutely right. I have family members who have been who've been to Istanbul 10, 15 years ago. Israel used to go on vacation there all the time. It was a big, like, there was no, I mean, in my lifetime, like, it was pretty recent that, like, I had family members flying over to Istanbul for vacation. Now that's absolutely impossible. I think Erdogan, I think Turkey takes more of a Qatar-ish type role in things. I think that they like to play both sides very well, because I think that they would be willing to open back up relations with Israel. Like, on the one hand, if Gaza wasn't happening, if like the whole war was ended, it all has to do with Gaza right now. But if we're talking like after Gaza and like, I think that actually Turkey would be open to normalizing again, because they're looking to see that the Middle East is starting to normalize with Israel. When it comes to Syria, I know right now there's a ceasefire. Israel is holding to that ceasefire at the moment. They haven't gone in, even though the Druze massacres are still happening, and I don't know if things are changing there, but the ceasefire is still holding. So there hasn't been any military action on Israel in the last few days. So they, I think, are looking in the bigger picture rather than going in and trying to stop the massacres from happening, which I do want to say again, they are still happening at this moment. It is unclear who's massacring the Druze. A lot of it is the Bedouins, is the Bedouin militias that they have been fighting. So I don't know if it's Jolani's forces right now that are the ones perpetrating the violence. It's really hard to know what's going on because they cut off electricity to Sueda. They cut off like all internet. Like, there's very few facts coming out about like what actually is the facts on the ground. But I don't know what Turkey's going to do. They like to, like I said, they like to play both sides. They maneuver, they manipulate, but just the way that if Gaza doesn't end correctly, I think in their eyes, they would be happy to start some conflicts. But if Gaza ends, I think that we could see a shift in their relationship towards Israel, hopefully for the better.
Shamsul?
Yeah. Erdogan and Turkey. I forgot to mention that when we had our episode 5 with Said, as I mentioned just now, he called him the head of the caliphate. And I don't disagree with him at all. I think the Muslim Brotherhood and how they have fermented things within the Muslim countries. At the end of the day, the real threat to really get them to get these societies and this political leadership to finally go away is actually democratization by liberating the discussions. It has to happen, and it comes with the society getting much more mature and richer. Other than that, I think sometimes when I look at what's happening in Syria and all that, I'm just saying, US, stay out of it. Let Israel handle that situation in the Middle East, because we know how that ideology is being used in order to destabilize, number one, or gain power by the people who wants to hold on to political power.
Peter?
Pivoting like staying in the region, but sort of pivoting away from the Syria issue to something different but related. I wanted to ask about, over the weekend there was number one, there was reporting that the Trump administration is really frustrated with Netanyahu and that they kind of worn out a lot of their patience on things. And this may or may not have been exacerbated by a lot of the coverage that was given to the IDF tank hitting the Catholic Church in Gaza, and other issues related to, I know that Mike Huckabee went and Mike Huckabee, who is obviously a very, very pro-Israel person, who visited Taibe, the Christian West Bank village that was attacked by settlers, and there was also reporting that he is, on that issue in general, he's very upset, and it takes a lot to get someone like Mike Huckabee upset with you. So what do you do you think that frustration, if you have any thoughts on this, Haley, do you think that frustration is, yes, that's correct, Andre, that was the article that was one of the things I was referencing. Do you think that what do you think will come of this, if anything?
First of all, everybody is fed up with Netanyahu, regardless of if you're American or Israeli. Even the ultra-Orthodox are fed up with him. Everybody's fed up with him. I think if he doesn't treat this correctly, if he doesn't do, first of all, the settler violence needs to be absolutely investigated, and they need to be behind bars, arrested. I have so many thoughts about the settler. They disgust me with more words than anybody can say. And I really hope that the IDF doesn't, not the IDF, because it's mostly military there. So I hope they do investigations, and I hope that every single person is arrested and charged and whatever. If Bibi is smart, he will listen to Mike Huckabee, and he will do exactly what he wants. The attack on the church was absolutely horrific, and I know that the IDF is investigating what happened. Sometimes their explanations are not good enough, but they do investigate every single instance of wrong fire or civilian death. They investigate it, and there are research reports on every single instance, whether people hear about it or not. It does happen every single time. So if Bibi is smart, he will do exactly what Mike Huckabee is saying. Mike Huckabee threatened to either revoke visas from Israelis to America, make problems on the visa applications from Israelis to America, which will be a catastrophe if that were to happen. So if he's smart, he will do exactly what he's asking. And if he wants to stay, in power again. Everything has the air of elections around it right now in Israel because he's starting to lose his government. And regardless of if elections happen in October or January, they are going to happen. So he's right now in campaign mode, in trying to stay alive mode, and in doing whatever it takes to keep, like I said, to keep himself alive. So that's his number one priority, which you will now see if in the next coming days there's another hostage deal, there's another ceasefire deal, and it goes through. You will see, we all know exactly why it's happening now. It's happening because elections are around the corner, and he wants everybody to forget his mistakes and focus on what's happening now. This is Bibi trying to last, and this is all of his decisions are going to be tampered with that, and we all have to take everything he does right now with a grain of salt because of that. So any decision regarding Syria, any decision regarding Gaza, it's all because he wants to stay alive.
How do you think that, and I appreciate the sentiments about the settlers with regards to doing things in these Christian villages. It really, breaks my heart to see things like that, as a ethnic Jewish convert to Orthodox Christianity, who has been to Israel, before I converted, but still. And it's, really, this has been like, things like this are probably the most damaging to not just in terms of the loss of life and everything, but in terms of damaging Israel, in terms of its image, but how do you solve the problem of the settlers? Because in the West Bank, there's a lot of them. They're quite dug in. They have guns. What do you do? What do you do? What should they do?
Unfortunately, I don't think at this point, because there are so many, because the government is what it is, and it's made up of the most extreme voices in Israeli society. They are a minority, but they have the voice right now. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. The settlers
follow up on that. Sorry, you finish, and then I have a follow up on that. Yeah.
Settlers have been out of control for a very long time. If you talk to secular Israelis, this is one of the biggest issues that they have, because they are seen as terrorists from our point of view, just as much as Hamas is. And I have no problem saying that. These are extremists of our society, and they, as the same way as Hamas thinks this is all in the name of God, they unfortunately think this is all in the name of God too. And they belong on this land, and they have, it's an ideology. This isn't just people who want to pick up and, move because they, want to start problems. This is as much of an ideology as it is on Hamas's side. And these are the religious extremists in our society, and they have the voice right now. And it's up to all the normal, sane Israelis, which I would say about 75 to 80% of us are, even the religious ones, but there are much more sane religious people in our society that have to take control back, because otherwise it's just going to get so much worse.
And do you see, when this next election comes, do you see the likes of Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and whatnot? Do you see them increasing their support, holding steady, decreasing? How do you see that playing out?
So luckily, the polls that have come out recently, Ben-Gvir doesn't make even the threshold for
the list, yeah,
at all. He's not going to be elected. Smotrich still has his base. He hasn't lost his. I think he's still around the same, maybe a little bit less. I think he's at 9 mandates rather than 13. I could be completely wrong here, but I believe he has a little bit less than he did before. But Ben-Gvir will be out of the government. That's 100%. But it's the coalition you build. So if Bibi, let's say for all sakes, if he gets elected again, if the Likud becomes the party that gets elected again, Bibi has two choices. He can do the religious, ultra orthodox, and take those extremists back and try to form that government again, or he can look inward and go to the center left, which is a much bigger coalition that he can build. And most people think that if he
Meaning
does
Lapid, basically.
Lapid, Bennett, Eisenkot, there's a lot of people on the left.
You would describe Bennett as center left at this point. That's quite something. Wow,
yes, it
that
is.
tells you how the Overton window has shifted in Israel, doesn't it?
Really
Wow.
crazy how Bennett has become center left. He used to be an extreme.
Far right. He was considered far right like 10 years ago.
Moderated because he understands the only thing that matters right now is to get Bibi out of power. That's the most important thing in Israeli society. Everything else can be debated. And so you get this government out of power, and then we can then let's talk about what we do. Like, this is the consensus of, I would say.
I'm gonna repin my tweet then that says bye bye Bibi, bye bye Hamas, bye bye Matrix with your approval on that. I just wanted to give Andre a chance to give us an update. Just in the chat, Duke asked about where are the weapons systems, and sorry, there's talk of Cleveland Indians in the chat, so I lost the point. I'm sure Andre knows what was asked. Andre, if you could give us the final, and we can close out on that. Folks can still hang with us.
I will not comment on my good friend in Ohio's favorite sports team, if that is his favorite sports team, but I will talk about Ukraine. Yes, it was another bad night. I believe General Kellogg is still somewhere on Ukrainian territory. So what happened? More drones. So especially these large Iranian drones, the Shahed drones. There was close to 500 in one night. Going against you. I had a couple of friends in Kyiv who saw these stand like twice the height of a human being. They're very large with wings, look like a delta. And so people saw them outside their apartment building flying through Kyiv. The crazy thing is that, not the crazy thing, but one of the strategies is a good percentage of them are dumb. They don't have bombs in them. They're there to take the anti-aircraft fire, which is for drones, mostly high caliber automatic machine guns, and so that overwhelms. And then the real smart ones, some of which have Starlink embedded in them, so they can do some maneuvers to fly towards one city, double back, and then attack Kyiv or another major city. So 500 of them were dropped, a couple of hundred glide bombs. And then plenty of MiGs and bombers were in the air last night, firing Kinjals and other ballistic missiles against Ukraine. Question from Duke was, where are the weapons from the United States? The only thing that crossed the border was what was Pete Hegseth stopped last at the beginning of the month. That's the only thing that was on the trucks ready to go. What President Trump announced was a plan to purchase weapons and then get that through. I think I've explained here before that takes a while for individual countries to appropriate funds and then send stuff to Ukraine. We might be able to go a little quicker if they send the Patriots that are in those countries to Ukraine and then work on funding the replacement for those Patriots. But in the end, all of this is going to take time. Where that was discussed was today virtually. Was the first time that the Ukraine contact group met with Pete Hegseth taking once again a leadership position there. Well, the United States doesn't lead. There's something called the Ukraine contact group that was set up by Lloyd Austin in the first months of the war, where all these different defense secretaries talk to each other regularly. And last month was the first time in June of 2025 that the United States did not participate at all. This was part of Hegseth's plan of let's stop weapons, let's not go there. That did not go over well with the White House. So at the end, we have this contact group. Ukraine just shuffled their cabinet last week also. So the former prime minister is now the defense minister who was at that meeting with Pete Hegseth, with other people. That's today's call was about logistics. How do we make Trump's plan work in the next 50 days to make sure that weapons are coming, especially in the summer, because Russia has planned to have a summer offensive around August, for those of you who don't know, is Ukrainians' Independence Day. That's the best time to bomb Ukraine, when we're trying to celebrate. So this is when, between now and August 24th, is when this contact group is going to try to figure out how to get those weapons, Duke, to Ukraine. Don't know if it's going to happen in time.
Thank you, Andre.
On that somber note, we're going to have to cut the live, but folks, please hang out with us 10, 15 minutes on Zoom, and we'll continue the conversation.
Sorry if we cut anyone off, but that's a wrap. Remember, you can catch us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. It's your chance to join the conversation and have your voice heard. Just check the link in the description or visit americastalk.show. Together, through the free exchange of ideas, we can truly make America great again. Don't miss out. Tune in and be part